The music world lost another legend. So we wanted to take a moment to pause and remember Robin Gibb.
Don't cry alone.
He stood under the lights, a man who had everything: fame, fortune, and a voice that defined an entire generation. But behind that polished smile, Robin Gibb was hiding a truth so heavy, it found its way into his music. To the world, Robin was one of the Bee Gees, part of a brotherhood that built timeless songs about love, loss, and staying alive. But in private, he carried a secret that would one day become public, splashed across headlines, and whispered about in every room he entered. And yet Robin didn't confess it in interviews. He didn't admit it to cameras. He let the truth slip out the only way he knew how, through a song, a haunting ballad that sounded like a goodbye, like an apology, like a man finally admitting something he couldn't say out loud. The question is, which secret was he confessing, and what did the song really mean? Because when you hear the words "Don't Cry Alone Today," you can't help but wonder, was Robin Gibb singing to his fans, to his wife, to someone else? Stay with me, because the story behind this song will make you hear it in a way you never have before. This is RetroWaves, where the real stories behind the music finally come out. Hit subscribe, and don't miss what's coming next. Robin Gibb's life was never simple. From the moment the Bee Gees broke through in the late 1960s, his angelic voice carried songs that could bring listeners to tears. He was the quiet one, the thoughtful brother who always seemed to live more in the shadows than in the spotlight. While Barry's charisma and Maurice's humor made them larger than life, Robin was the soul of the group, fragile, sensitive, and deeply emotional. Fans loved him not just for his voice, but because he seemed to sing with a kind of pain no one else could touch. In 1985, Robin married Dwina Murphy-Gibb, an Irish artist and writer who was known for her eccentric, free-spirited nature. Together they presented themselves as an unconventional but devoted couple. Dwina often spoke about their open-minded lifestyle, and Robin once joked that his marriage was anything but ordinary. To the public it was charming, even a little eccentric, but it also created questions. How much could a marriage bend before it finally broke? Still, Robin's fans believed he was a family man at heart. He had children from his first marriage, and now he and Dwina seemed content to live quietly in their country home, away from the chaos of stardom. But behind those closed doors, things weren't so peaceful. By the early 2000s, whispers began to surface. Robin was getting close to someone else, someone who wasn't his wife. And in 2008, those whispers exploded into headlines when it was revealed that Robin had fathered a child with another woman, Claire Yang. The news shocked the public. How could a man who sang so beautifully about love betray the very vows he had made? How would Dwina react? And most of all, how did Robin live with the weight of that secret? He didn't sit down for a confessional interview. He didn't write a tell-all memoir, but he did something else. He wrote a song, and when Don't Cry Alone was finally released in 2012,
Don't cry alone.
Just months before his death, many listeners couldn't shake the feeling that Robin wasn't just singing about loss. He was confessing something far more personal. But who was he really singing to? And what message was he leaving behind? The answers start to reveal themselves when we look closer at the years leading up to that haunting song. On stage, Robin Gibb was everything fans wanted him to be, the soft-spoken brother who could pour heartbreak into every lyric, the man who made "I Started a Joke" sound like a prayer whispered through tears.
Which started the whole world, baby.
To millions, he was the symbol of sincerity, but away from the lights, life looked different. At home, Robin's marriage to Dwina was often described as unusual. Friends knew Dwina as tolerant, artistic, even eccentric. She had spoken openly about being bisexual and about their relationship not being bound by strict traditional rules. For a while, this gave the impression that their bond was unshakable, that Robin could find comfort in this openness, and yet there was another story unfolding quietly in the background. Robin had grown close to Claire Yang, a young woman who worked for the family. What began as companionship slowly deepened, crossing boundaries no one expected him to cross. In 2008, the truth could no longer be hidden. Claire gave birth to Robin's daughter, Snow. The revelation shattered the image many had of Robin. For fans, it was a jarring contrast. The man who sang with such purity had been leading a double life. For Dwina, It was a storm she chose to weather publicly. Reports confirmed that she allowed Claire and the child to live in a house provided on their estate. She didn't deny what had happened. She didn't leave Robin. She simply accepted it. But what did Robin feel? Guilt? Relief? Regret? He never spoke in detail about the affair, never explained how he managed to live between two worlds, one as the devoted husband, the other as the secret father, and that silence is why Don't Cry Alone would one day feel so powerful, because in its lyrics, you can almost hear Robin breaking that silence in the only way he knew how.
I will not forsake you ever.
When the news broke in 2008, it was everywhere. Robin Gibb, the gentle, almost fragile Bee was suddenly at the center of a tabloid storm. Newspapers printed the photographs, and the headlines left little to the imagination. A long-term affair, a child outside his marriage, and a wife who chose not to walk away. To fans who had grown up with the Bee Gees' music, it felt like a betrayal. This was the same man whose voice carried songs about faithfulness, devotion, and enduring love. Now those lyrics sounded different, tinged with irony, even hypocrisy. But Robin didn't fight back against the press. He didn't hold a press conference or release a statement defending himself. Instead, he stayed quiet. He carried on as if nothing had changed, attending public events with Dwina by his side, even as reporters whispered about the secret that had finally become public. Behind closed doors, though, Robin's life was changing in another way. His health had begun to fail. By 2010, reports confirmed he was facing serious illness. At first it was stomach problems, then a cancer diagnosis. He grew thinner, paler, and weaker. Yet he kept working on music, and that's when the meaning of his silence deepened. How do you balance the weight of fame, the guilt of betrayal, and the looming shadow of mortality? Robin had always been a man who expressed what he couldn't say out loud through songs. But now, as his body grew frail, the urgency became stronger. If he couldn't tell the truth in words, maybe he could leave it behind in music. That urgency would come to life in one haunting track, written while he was fading, but determined to finish his story. A song that sounded less like a performance and more like a farewell. But was it really just about death? Or was Robin confessing to something else? By 2011, Robin's health had worsened. He was in and out of hospitals, fighting for strength, but still holding on to the one thing that gave him meaning: music. At this fragile stage of his life, Robin began working on what would become his final major project, Titanic Requiem. It wasn't a Bee Gees record, it wasn't pop or disco or anything the world expected from him. Instead, it was a classical work, composed with his son, Robin John. At the heart of the Requiem was a track unlike anything Robin had recorded before, Don't Cry Alone.
Sweep away your pain and sorrow.
From the opening notes, it was clear this wasn't just another song. Robin's voice, thinner now but still piercing, carried a weight that couldn't be faked. He sounded like a man reaching out across a divide. Whether it was to his wife, his children, his secret daughter, or even to his fans, no one could say for sure. The lyrics were simple, almost painfully so. Don't cry alone. To many, it sounded like a goodbye, a promise from a man who knew his time was short, reassuring those he would leave behind. But to others, it sounded like something else entirely. A hidden message from a man carrying guilt, speaking to someone he could never fully claim in public. Could it have been for Claire, for Snow, for Dwina? Robin never explained. He never said, "This song is about my secret," but he didn't need to. The way he sang it, with that aching, fragile voice, told listeners that these words carried more than just melody. They carried the truth he couldn't bring himself to say out loud. And the timing made it even more haunting, because Robin recorded those words while his body was fading fast, as if he knew this would be his last chance to speak. When Don't Cry Alone was finally released in 2012,
Don't you ever cry, I'll sweep away your tears.
it didn't come with a glossy music video or a chart-topping push. Robin was already too ill to promote it. Instead, it arrived quietly, tucked inside Titanic Requiem, like a secret left behind for anyone who cared to listen. And people listened. Fans who had followed Robin for decades said they had never heard him sound so raw. Critics wrote that the track was etchingly personal, that it felt less like a performance and more like Robin singing directly to someone behind closed doors. Many assumed he was addressing his fans, trying to comfort them, reminding them not to mourn when he was gone. Others thought the song was meant for his brothers, especially Maurice, who had died years earlier. The Bee Gees had always been tied together in life and in music, and Robin often spoke about how deeply he missed Maurice. But then came another interpretation. Some listeners, aware of the headlines and the scandal, believed Don't Cry Alone was Robin's way of reaching out to the daughter he could never publicly raise. The words, they said, carried the tone of a father asking for forgiveness, assuring his child that, even if he wasn't there, she was not forgotten. Of course, Robin never confirmed this. That connection is speculation, born from timing and circumstance. What's verified is simple. Robin wrote and recorded the song while living with both the weight of illness and the shadow of a public secret, and that's why the track has remained so haunting. Because when you listen, you can't shake the feeling that Robin was singing to more than just one person. It feels like he was splitting himself between fans, family, and the secret life he couldn't escape. But if the song was a confession, then it left one painful question hanging in the air. Did the people closest to him hear it that way too? If Don't Cry Alone sounded like a confession, then the person most likely to hear it that way was the woman who had stood beside Robin through everything, his wife, Dwina. From the outside, Dwina's response to the scandal was almost shocking in itself. When Claire Yang gave birth to Snow, Dwina didn't walk away. She didn't file for divorce or go on television to expose her husband. Instead, she stayed. Reports confirmed that Claire was even given a home on the Gibb estate, provided for by Robin, while Dwina remained in the main house. It was a picture that baffled outsiders. How could she accept this? Why didn't she leave? Friends described Dwina as unusual, tolerant, and fiercely protective of her family's image. She had always lived differently from most, and perhaps that gave her the strength to endure what others could not. But even for her, the knowledge of Robin's second life must have been heavy. So when Don't Cry Alone was recorded, one can only imagine how those words sounded in her ears. Was it a message of comfort from a dying husband, assuring her she wouldn't face life without him? Or was it also, quietly, an apology? The closest Robin could come to admitting how much pain his choices had caused. Dwina never said. She never told reporters what she thought of the song, or whether she heard the confession others believed was buried inside it. What is confirmed is that she stood beside him until the very end, honoring his legacy even after his death in 2012. But her silence leaves a lingering mystery. Did Dwina forgive him completely, or did she carry questions she never voiced? Questions only Robin's haunting song could answer. In 2008, when Snow was born, Robin was already in his late 50s. For her, life would always be complicated, born into a world where her very existence carried whispers and scandal. The newspapers called her the love child. Tabloids followed Claire Yang, her mother, wherever she went. And while Robin provided for them financially, giving Claire a home on the family estate, there was always a distance. Unlike the children from his marriage, Snow could never be fully acknowledged in public. For a man who had built his career writing songs about love and connection, the idea of keeping one child in the shadows must have weighed heavily on him. Robin never spoke openly about it. There are no verified interviews where he explained how he balanced being both a father and a secret. But then came Don't Cry Alone. To some, it sounded like the song was written for Snow, a father's quiet plea to a daughter he couldn't raise the way he wanted. Don't cry alone.
Don't cry alone.
If that interpretation is true, then the track becomes more than a farewell to fans or a comfort to his wife. It becomes Robin's most personal letter, a message for the child who would grow up with questions about why her father's love had to be hidden. Of course, that connection is speculation. Robin never confirmed it. What's known for certain is that the song was written and recorded while Snow was still a young child, and while Robin himself was coming to terms with his own mortality. That timing makes the song feel even more like a confession, because if Robin couldn't say it out loud in life, perhaps he left it in music, where it would last forever. But if Don't Cry Alone really was for Snow, then what did it mean for the rest of his family? For decades, Robin Gibb's voice had been tied to his brothers. The Bee Gees were more than a band. They were family, bound together in ways no outsider could ever fully understand. When Maurice died suddenly in 2003, Robin was devastated. The twins had always shared a special closeness, and Maurice's passing left Robin adrift. He often spoke about feeling like part of himself had disappeared. Fans noticed it too. His eyes looked heavier, his words slower, as if he was always carrying grief just beneath the surface. So when Don't Cry Alone came out, some listeners believed Robin was singing directly to Maurice. The lyrics about not being left, about still being present, sounded like the words of a brother reaching out across death itself. Barry, the last surviving brother, faced a different kind of pain. He was forced to watch Robin grow weaker every month, knowing he was about to lose yet another sibling. For Barry, the song might have felt like a cruel echo of what he already feared, that he would soon be the last one left. But the Bee Gees' music had always blurred the line between personal pain and universal meaning. The same song that a fan might hear as a father's confession could just as easily be heard by Barry as a brother's goodbye, and that's what made Don't Cry Alone so haunting. It wasn't written for one person. It could have been for Dwina, for Snow, for Maurice, for Barry, or for all of them at once. Robin's voice carried every layer of his life: love, guilt, grief, and farewell. Yet even with all those possibilities, one mystery remained. If this was Robin's confession through music, then what truth was he finally willing to leave behind? By the time Don't Cry Alone was released in April 2012, Robin Gibb was already gravely ill. Reports confirmed he had been battling cancer for years, and his appearances showed just how much the disease had taken from him. His once bright face was drawn, his body frail. But even as his health collapsed, Robin's determination to leave something behind never wavered. He attended the London premiere of Titanic Requiem in a wheelchair, too weak to perform, but still present to witness the music he and his son had created. For those in the room that night, it felt like more than just a concert. It felt like Robin's farewell. And when Don't Cry Alone played, people listened with a kind of silence that said they knew exactly what they were hearing, a man's last message to the world. He would pass away only weeks later, on May 20, 2012, at the age of 62. His wife Dwina, his children, and even Claire and Snow were left behind in the tangled story of his life. But his voice, captured forever in that one haunting song, made sure his story would not end in silence. The world had the headlines, the family had the pain, but only in music did Robin leave his confession. When you listen to Don't Cry Alone today, it's impossible not to hear it differently. Is it a goodbye to Maurice, a reassurance to Barry, a comfort to Dwina, or is it, quietly, a secret message to Snow, the child he could not publicly raise, but perhaps could reach through music? Robin never confirmed. That's the part that keeps the mystery alive. But what is confirmed is that Robin chose this song as his final word. Out of all the melodies he could have written, out of all the stories he could have told, he left this, a plea not to cry, not to be alone, even after he was gone. The tension comes from what he didn't say, because in those final days, he could have told the truth outright. Instead, he sang it. He wrapped his secret inside a song, turning pain into melody, turning guilt into art. And in that moment, Robin Gibb, the man who lived two lives, who carried both love and scandal, who lost his twin and faced his own end, finally gave the world his most unguarded self. But if Don't Cry Alone was his confession, then it also raises one haunting question. Did the people it was meant for ever realize it was written for them? Robin Gibb is remembered today as one of the voices of the Bee Gees, a man whose music touched millions across the world. His songs still play at weddings, funerals, and quiet nights at home, carrying emotions people can't put into words themselves. But his legacy is more complicated than the polished story of pop stardom. Behind the hits, behind the fame, Robin lived with secrets that shaped his final years. The affair, the child, the unconventional marriage, all of it left questions that will never be fully answered. What is clear is this: Robin chose music as his language. When he couldn't confess with words, he wrote, "Don't Cry Alone." And whether it was meant for his wife, his daughter, his brothers, or his fans, the message remains the same. Don't weep in silence, don't carry pain by yourself. Even when he could no longer stand on a stage, Robin Gibb was still reaching out, telling someone, maybe everyone, that they were not alone. And that's why the song still lingers. Not just as a farewell, but as a reminder. Sometimes the deepest truths aren't spoken in interviews or written in books. They're hidden inside the music. waiting for those who know how to listen. So maybe, just maybe, Robin left his secret in plain sight, and maybe that was his plan all along. This is RetroWaves, where the stories behind the songs finally come to light. If this one made you hear Robin Gibb's voice in a new way, drop a comment and tell us what you believe Don't Cry Alone was really about. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next story may change the way you hear another song forever.